What happens when a brother's love turns into a royal war? Prince Harry's world shattered, literally, after a shocking message from Prince William and Kate at Balmoral. Reports say Harry smashed his phone in a furious rage after reading their blunt declaration. "You chose exile, stay there." This isn't just family drama. It's a royal showdown that threatens to tear the monarchy apart. Tonight, we uncover the explosive details behind that message, what it means for the future of the brothers, and the secret tensions pushing Harry to the edge. Stay with us, because the royal family's darkest chapter is far from over. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. It began as a quiet evening in Montecito, the kind of evening Harry had grown used to since stepping away from royal life. But that calm shattered in an instant. The Duke of Sussex was pacing his California mansion, his phone still warm from the blistering words he had just read. The message wasn't long, but it cut deeper than any dagger. "You chose exile, stay there." It was blunt, brutal, and it came directly from Balmoral, the royal family's sacred Scottish retreat where Harry had once felt the warmth of family traditions, laughter echoing in the halls, and the rare moments where he and William were simply brothers, not heirs or spares. But this message carried none of that warmth. It was cold, final, and as Harry read it again, something in him snapped. Witnesses say they heard the unmistakable sound of glass shattering against the walls. His phone, smashed into pieces. Harry's face was flushed, his jaw clenched so tight it looked painful. He was muttering under his breath, pacing faster, as Meghan watched silently from across the room. This wasn't just anger. It was betrayal. The words from William and Kate weren't a suggestion or a plea for space. They were a line drawn in the sand, a declaration of war. For Harry, the message was more than a rejection. It was a confirmation of what he had feared all along, that his brother and sister-in-law no longer saw him as family. How had it come to this? Once, the two princes were inseparable. Harry had stood by William's side through heartbreak, weddings, and the birth of his children. Kate had been like the sister he never had, someone who balanced William's sternness with gentle kindness. But now, those bonds had been reduced to sharp words sent through a screen. Sources say the message wasn't even meant to provoke Harry, it was meant to set boundaries. After years of interviews, memoirs, and public accusations, William and Kate had allegedly decided they could no longer keep trying to mend something they believed Harry didn't want fixed. So they said what they had been holding in for years: "You chose exile. Stay there." As Harry's anger boiled over, his mind raced back to his last visit to Balmoral. It had been years since he set foot in that place, but he remembered it vividly. Hunting trips with William, barbecues with their father, Queen Elizabeth's quiet moments with her corgis. Balmoral had been a place of refuge for generations of royals, a fortress where they hid from the world's prying eyes. But now it had become the stage for Harry's humiliation. The message from Balmoral wasn't just words, it was a symbolic exile from the very heart of the royal family. Meghan reportedly tried to calm him, telling him to breathe and focus. But Harry couldn't. He felt cornered. Insiders claim he shouted that William had finally shown his true colors, that Kate had poisoned her husband against him, and that the whole family had abandoned him when he needed them most. The walls of their mansion seemed to close in on him. Harry wasn't just angry, he was devastated. Royal insiders suggest the timing of the message was deliberate. With the family gathered at Balmoral for their annual retreat, it sent a clear signal. While the Cambridges were surrounded by family, Harry was alone, thousands of miles away, cut off from the only life he had ever known. Even more striking, the message arrived on the eve of what would have been Princess Diana's birthday, a date that carried emotional weight for both brothers. To Harry, the message felt like an erasure of their mother's legacy, a betrayal of everything she had tried to teach them about unity. But was this really a cold-hearted act by William and Kate? Or was it the culmination of years of pain and misunderstandings? Some royal experts argue that the Cambridges had been pushed to their limits, forced to watch as Harry and Meghan aired the family's private struggles on global platforms. Oprah interviews, Netflix documentaries, bombshell memoirs, it all added fuel to a fire that had been smoldering for years. The message, they say, wasn't an attack. It was self-preservation. For Harry, though, none of that mattered. All he saw was a brother who had chosen the institution over him. All he felt was the sting of rejection. As he sat down, his head in his hands, Meghan reportedly whispered something to him. We don't know what she said. Maybe it was reassurance. Maybe it was strategy. But what we do know is this: the rift between the royal brothers had reached a point of no return, and the world was about to watch it all unfold. The Montecito sun was setting slowly, casting long golden shadows across the Sussex's sprawling estate, but the warmth of the evening did nothing to calm the storm brewing inside the house. Harry stood by the massive floor-to-ceiling windows, staring out but seeing nothing. His hands were clenched tightly, nails digging into his palms as flashes of memory assaulted him. This wasn't just about a message. It was about years of tension, misunderstandings, and heartbreak that had brought him to this point. He could still hear the words echoing in his mind. You chose exile, stay there. It hadn't always been this way. There was a time when Harry couldn't imagine his life without his older brother by his side. As children, they were inseparable, bonded by their shared grief after losing their mother. William had been Harry's protector, his confidant, the one person who truly understood the pressures of growing up in the gilded cage of royalty. Even after William married Kate, Harry had found comfort in their little trio. Kate had welcomed him like family, often coaxing laughter out of him when the weight of royal duty felt suffocating. Those days seemed like a distant dream now. After Harry and Meghan's shocking decision to step back from royal duties, everything changed. At first, there were polite exchanges, attempts to maintain civility, but as time went on, the messages became colder, the calls less frequent. Harry had hoped that distance would heal old wounds, but instead, it had only widened the chasm between him and his family. Meghan had tried to reassure him, saying they needed space to grow, but deep down, Harry couldn't shake the gnawing feeling that he had lost something irreplaceable. Balmoral had always been sacred ground for the royals. Nestled in the Scottish Highlands, it was a place of tradition, where the family would gather every summer away from prying eyes. It was there, in those quiet, misty hills, that Harry and William had spent some of their happiest childhood days. The message coming from Balmoral felt like a cruel twist of fate. It wasn't just a message, it was a declaration sent from a place that once symbolized family unity. Now, it symbolized his exclusion. The decision to send the message wasn't made lightly. Sources close to William and Kate claimed that they had deliberated for days. The couple had reportedly grown weary of the constant drama and media spectacles surrounding Harry and Meghan. Every new interview, every leaked detail felt like another knife in the back of the family. The Cambridges, known for their measured approach, had finally reached their breaking point. They needed to make it clear where they stood. Harry didn't see it that way. To him, the message was more than a boundary, it was a betrayal. He felt abandoned by the very people he had once fought to protect. The memory of standing behind William at their mother's funeral, the two boys walking silently in unison, now felt like a cruel reminder of what they had lost. As he replayed the words over and over, Harry's anger grew. He grabbed his phone, scrolling through old messages from William. The warmth that used to be there was gone, replaced by formality and tension. He tried calling, but the line rang out. No answer. That's when the rage bubbled over. Without thinking, he hurled his phone across the room, the sound of it shattering against the wall breaking the heavy silence. Meghan, seated on the couch, looked up startled. She had seen Harry angry before, but this was different. This was raw, unfiltered emotion. She walked over slowly, placing a hand on his arm, trying to ground him. Harry, breathe, she whispered. But Harry shook his head. They've shut me out, Meg. They've shut us out for good. In that moment, he wasn't a prince, or a duke, or a public figure. He was a man grieving the loss of his family, his identity, his place in the world. Across the Atlantic, at Balmoral, William and Kate were reportedly calm, resolved in their decision. To them, the message wasn't meant to hurt. It was meant to protect their family and the monarchy from further turmoil. But could they have anticipated how deeply it would wound Harry? The storm was far from over. This was only the calm before the tempest that would engulf the royal family in ways none of them could have imagined. Shadows lengthened over Balmoral's ancient stones as the royal family gathered for dinner, unaware, or perhaps very aware, of the chaos their message had unleashed thousands of miles away. For Harry, this wasn't just another fight. It felt like the final straw. The air at Balmoral was thick with tradition. The scent of burning logs from the fireplaces, the quiet rustle of tartan kilts, and the distant sound of bagpipes all blended into the serene, almost sacred atmosphere of the Scottish Highlands. For over a century, Balmoral had been the royal family's private sanctuary, a place where kings and queens laid down the heavy crown for a few short weeks to be simply family. But on this day, the castle walls held secrets. In a quiet room tucked away from the laughter of younger royals playing outside, William and Kate sat with furrowed brows, their faces solemn as they crafted the words that would send shockwaves across the Atlantic. You chose exile, stay there. It wasn't written hastily. It wasn't a moment of anger. It was deliberate, the product of hours of discussion and years of frustration. According to palace insiders, the couple had been urged by aides and even King Charles himself to finally address the Harry problem. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex had become a source of endless controversy, their interviews and media appearances sparking chaos with every revelation. Every time Harry spoke out, whether in his memoir or on television, it wasn't just his father or brother who felt the sting, it was the entire monarchy. William and Kate, known for their restraint, had tried for years to avoid confrontation. After Harry and Meghan's exit, they had sent messages, extended olive branches, and even invited Harry back for key family events. But those efforts seemed to crumble each time another accusation made headlines. Meghan had allegedly whispered to Harry during one such family gathering, "They don't want us here." And perhaps she was right. At Balmoral, the decision to send this message had not come easily. William, the future king, had been deeply conflicted. His love for his younger brother clashed violently with his sense of duty to the crown. Kate, often seen as the peacemaker in the family, had reportedly been the one to urge William to act decisively. "We can't keep living in limbo," she is said to have told him. "This isn't healthy for the family, or for Harry." The weight of the words they chose carried centuries of royal etiquette and unspoken expectations. The phrase "stay there" was particularly cutting. It wasn't just a suggestion that Harry remain in California. It was a declaration that he was no longer welcome in the inner sanctum of the royal family. Harry, of course, didn't know any of this. All he saw was a message that felt like a dagger. Back in Montecito, the shattered pieces of his phone still lay on the floor. Harry stared blankly at the fireplace as Meghan hovered near him. She had suggested he take a walk to clear his head, but Harry couldn't bring himself to move. Balmoral was flashing in his mind, Christmas mornings spent with his grandparents, long walks with William across the misty hills, and the late Queen's soft voice as she told stories by the fire. To him, Balmoral wasn't just a castle. It was home. And now, that home had shut its doors. According to a close friend of the Sussexes, Harry had been clinging to the hope that he could one day return, if not as a working royal, then at least as a brother. He never expected to be embraced by the institution again, the friend said, but he thought William would find a way to forgive him. This message crushed that hope completely. But was the message truly as cold as it seemed? Some royal commentators argue that it was an act of mercy disguised as cruelty. By drawing a clear line, William and Kate may have been trying to free Harry from the impossible tug-of-war between his new life and his old one. "It's harsh, yes," said one former palace aide, "but sometimes harshness is necessary when the stakes are this high." And the stakes were higher than ever. With rumors swirling about upcoming tell-all projects from Meghan and whispers of private family secrets potentially being exposed, the Cambridges had felt backed into a corner. William, deeply protective of his wife and children, could no longer risk the possibility of private moments being turned into public scandals. At Balmoral, as William signed off on the final draft of the message, Kate placed her hand on his shoulder. "You're doing the right thing," she said softly. But even she couldn't help the flicker of sadness in her eyes. She had always hoped she could be the bridge between the brothers. But now, that bridge was in flames. Thousands of miles away, Harry felt the burn of that fire. The words, simple as they were, seemed to scream at him. "Stay there." He whispered the phrase to himself, over and over, trying to make sense of it. Meghan finally spoke up. "Maybe this is their way of saying they can't handle the pain anymore," she offered gently. Harry didn't respond. He wasn't sure if the pain she referred to was theirs or his. For Harry, the message wasn't just a rejection from his brother. It was a rejection from the family he had sacrificed so much to protect. And in his mind, it wasn't fair. This wasn't supposed to be their story. But now, the message from Balmoral had become a symbol. A turning point in a royal saga that had been unfolding in slow motion for years. And as the Cambridges retired for the night, confident they had done the right thing, Harry sat awake in Montecito, staring at the stars through tear-filled eyes, wondering if he had lost his family forever. You chose exile, stay there. 7 words. Just 7, but they carried the weight of centuries of royal expectation, tradition, and the personal heartbreak of 2 brothers who had once sworn to protect each other. For Harry, those words weren't just a message, they were a sentence. A confirmation of everything he had feared since stepping away from royal duties. He replayed them in his mind, dissecting each syllable, trying to understand how the relationship with his brother, his best friend for most of his life, had unraveled so completely. He could almost hear William's voice in his head. Stern, clipped, the tone of a man who had been forced to grow up too fast after their mother's death. Harry hated that tone. It wasn't the voice of the boy who used to sneak into his room late at night, sharing whispered jokes that made them both cry with laughter until Diana gently hushed them from down the hall. It wasn't the voice of the brother who had stood by him as they walked behind their mother's coffin, the whole world watching as two boys tried to hold back their tears. This voice, the one Harry imagined behind the message, was colder, harder, and it felt final. Insiders close to the royal family claimed the wording wasn't accidental. Every word was chosen carefully, almost surgically. Stay there. It wasn't just telling Harry not to come back. It was a declaration that he no longer had a place in the world he once called home. Some aides suggested softening the language, but William reportedly insisted that the message needed to be crystal clear. There can't be any more confusion, he said during a tense meeting with senior advisors. He needs to know where we stand. For Kate, the decision weighed heavily. She had once shared a warm bond with Harry, seeing him as the fun-loving younger brother who brought levity to stiff royal gatherings. In the early days of her marriage, Harry had been a frequent visitor at their home, often joining them for cozy dinners and late-night conversations. But as years passed and rifts deepened, Kate began to feel her loyalty split between her husband and the man who once felt like her own family. Royal experts say Kate was the one who pushed for compromise at first, urging William to keep the lines of communication open. But after years of explosive interviews, memoir confessions, and private family matters aired for the world to judge, even she began to lose hope. The final straw reportedly came after Harry's memoir, in which he described William as his beloved brother and greatest adversary. Adversary. The word stung William more than he let on. In Montecito, Harry's emotions oscillated between anger and crushing sadness. The words from William and Kate hit him like a punch to the gut, but part of him couldn't help wondering if he had brought this on himself. He thought about the interviews, the Oprah sit-down, the Netflix docuseries, the book. Each time he and Meghan spoke out, they felt they were defending themselves against a powerful institution. But what if, in doing so, they had burned the bridges they hoped to rebuild? Meghan tried to console him. Harry, they're just trying to control the narrative again. You know how they operate. But Harry didn't answer. He was staring at a photo of him and William as teenagers, arms slung around each other after a polo match, grinning widely. Back then, nothing could come between them. Now, an ocean and 7 cutting words separated them. Palace sources suggest that William's message was not sent in isolation. It was the culmination of months of discussions amongst senior royals. King Charles, torn between his sons, reportedly gave his tacit approval, telling aides, "This has to end one way or another." For Charles, the situation was agonizing. Losing Harry's trust had been a deep wound for the new monarch, but he feared the public rift threatened the stability of the crown itself. The choice of Balmoral as the origin of the message was deliberate. The Scottish estate was where the royal family traditionally went to heal, to regroup after scandals and crises. Sending such a decisive message from there gave it an added weight, almost as if the land itself spoke for the monarchy. Harry knew this. That's what made the rejection sting even more. He imagined the family gathered in Balmoral's grand dining room, the crackling fire casting shadows on ancient walls, laughter echoing through halls he was no longer welcome in. For years, Balmoral had been his sanctuary. Now, it felt like enemy territory. The phrase, "you chose exile," haunted him. He had chosen California, yes. He had chosen to leave the suffocating scrutiny of royal life for the freedom to raise his children away from flashing cameras. But he hadn't chosen to sever ties with his family. At least, not in his heart. To William and Kate, though, Harry's choice had felt like a betrayal. "We all made sacrifices for the crown," William reportedly told a friend. He wasn't the only one suffering. But he walked away, and then he made us the villains. As night fell over Montecito, Harry found himself staring into the darkness, grappling with a painful truth. The message wasn't just a statement, it was a verdict. And deep down, he feared there would be no appeal. The sound of shattering glass broke the silence in the Sussex's Montecito mansion. It wasn't just the phone that had splintered, it was Harry himself. His chest rose and fell in sharp, uneven breaths, his face flushed with a mixture of rage and despair. For a moment, he stood frozen, staring at the broken pieces on the marble floor as if he couldn't quite believe what he had done. Then he turned away, running both hands through his hair and pacing across the room. Meghan watched from the edge of the sofa, her eyes wide but her expression guarded. She knew this side of Harry, the tightly wound energy that threatened to erupt after each call with his family. But this time felt different. This wasn't the usual tension. This was raw, unfiltered emotion, the kind she hadn't seen since their final days in the UK. "Harry," she said gently, standing to approach him. "You need to breathe. Sit down." But Harry didn't hear her. He was too far gone, lost in a storm of memories and pain. The message kept replaying in his mind like a cruel chant. "You chose exile, stay there." He whispered the words under his breath, his voice cracking. Stay there. Is that it, then? That's what I am to them now." He slammed his fist against the wall, the impact reverberating through the quiet room. Megan flinched but didn't move closer. She knew better than to interrupt him when he was like this. Instead, she waited, her arms crossed tightly over her chest as if holding herself together. In Harry's mind, the memories collided violently. He saw his brother's face, stern, cold, the same look William had worn during their last argument at Frogmore Cottage. He heard his own voice shouting, "You're not just my brother anymore. You're the heir, and I'm nothing to you." And now, this message felt like confirmation. He was nothing to them. Harry collapsed into a chair, burying his face in his hands. "They've shut me out, Meg. They've shut us out for good." His voice was muffled, but Megan could hear the anguish in it. She knelt beside him, resting a hand on his knee. "No, they haven't. This is them lashing out. They're trying to provoke you." But Harry shook his head violently. "No. This isn't provocation. This is them cutting me off. For years, I thought there was still a chance. That maybe one day we'd talk, we'd fix this. But this," he gestured helplessly, "this feels final." Outside, the California night was still and quiet, but inside the Sussex home, the air was heavy with tension. Archie and Lilibet were asleep upstairs, unaware of the turmoil unraveling below. Harry looked up toward the ceiling, his eyes glassy. What am I going to tell them? That their family doesn't want them? Megan's hand tightened on his. "No. You're going to tell them the truth, that we made the choice to build a better life for them. That we didn't walk away from family. We walked away from an institution that didn't protect us." Harry didn't respond. He wanted to believe her words, but deep down, he couldn't silence the voice whispering that perhaps William had been protecting something, just not Harry. The hours dragged on as Harry sat slumped in the chair, staring blankly at the floor. Megan busied herself in the kitchen, making tea, though she doubted he'd drink it. She stole glances at him, wondering how long he could carry this pain before it broke him completely. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, William and Kate were preparing for bed in the quiet of Balmoral. The message had been sent earlier that day, and though they hadn't heard back from Harry, they didn't expect to. They had said what needed to be said. "We couldn't keep letting him drag us into this," William murmured to Kate as he folded his clothes neatly. "I know it hurts, but he made his choice. We have to think about George, Charlotte, and Louis now." Kate placed a hand on his arm, her expression soft but weary. "I know, but I hate seeing you like this, William. You've been carrying this weight for too long." William didn't reply. He was thinking of Harry. The boy who used to follow him everywhere, the brother who once confided his wildest dreams and deepest fears. That boy felt like a ghost now. Back in Montecito, Harry finally spoke again. "Do you think they ever cared? Or was it always about the crown?" His voice was barely above a whisper, but it cut through the silence like a blade. Megan crouched in front of him, her eyes locking on his. "Harry, they did care. Maybe they still do. But they don't know how to show it. That's on them, not you." Harry's shoulders sagged. "It doesn't matter anymore. Whatever we had, it's gone." He stood abruptly, heading for the back door. Megan called after him, but he didn't stop. The cool night air hit him like a wave as he stepped outside, the stars above spinning in the darkness. He felt small, insignificant, like a man untethered from everything that once grounded him. For the first time in years, Harry wasn't sure who he was or where he belonged. At Balmoral, the air was crisp and heavy with the earthy scent of pine and heather. The castle loomed under a cloudy Scottish sky, its ancient stones holding the weight of countless royal family dramas. Inside, William and Kate sat in the drawing room, the fire crackling softly as they talked in hushed tones. It was late, the children were asleep, and for the first time all day, they allowed themselves to speak openly, without the filters they used in public. William leaned forward in his chair, his elbows resting on his knees, hands clasped tightly as if trying to hold back an emotion he wasn't ready to show. "I didn't want it to come to this," he said quietly, his voice low and tired. "But what choice did we have?" Kate sat across from him, her pale pink cashmere sweater a sharp contrast to the dark mood in the room. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she studied her husband's face. His jaw was tense, his blue eyes glassy with something between sorrow and resolve. She reached out, placing a hand over his. "You've done everything you could," she said gently. "No one could say you didn't try." For years, William had walked a delicate tightrope, balancing his role as heir to the throne with his love for his younger brother. From the outside, their bond had seemed unbreakable. But behind palace doors, cracks had formed long before Harry and Meghan left for California. Royal aides say William was deeply hurt by Harry's decision to step down as a senior royal. To William, it felt like a betrayal, not just of family, but of duty. The brothers had once made a pact in their teenage years, vowing they'd always stand together against the pressures of the monarchy. But that pact had been shattered, piece by piece, as Harry's resentment toward the institution grew. Kate had tried to mend things in the beginning. She had sent long, heartfelt messages to Harry, urging him to meet and talk. She even arranged a secret meeting between the brothers in early 2020, hoping to ease the tension before it became irreparable. But that meeting reportedly ended in raised voices and slammed doors. "It's like he's not the same person anymore," William had told her afterwards. "I don't know how to reach him." And now, here they were, at Balmoral, where generations of royals had sought refuge, and William had sent his brother a message he never imagined himself writing. "You chose exile, stay there." Some in the royal household questioned whether the message was too harsh. A senior advisor had suggested a softer approach, perhaps an invitation for Harry to talk when he was ready. But William dismissed the idea. "We've tried that. Again and again. It hasn't worked." For Kate, watching her husband wrestle with the decision had been painful. She understood his frustration. She too felt betrayed by Harry and Meghan's public criticisms of the royal family. Their Oprah interview had left her reeling, especially the claim that Kate had made Meghan cry before the wedding. Friends say Kate was deeply hurt by that allegation, which she believed was a distortion of the truth. "She didn't just hurt me," Kate reportedly confided to a friend. "She hurt my children, my husband, the entire family. And Harry let it happen." At Balmoral, Kate tried to comfort William. "This wasn't an easy decision, but it's the right one. We can't keep letting him pull us into his chaos." But William couldn't help thinking of the boy Harry used to be, the cheeky, carefree younger brother who had once been his closest ally. He remembered the times they snuck out of royal events to grab a pint at a local pub, the way Harry used to tease him about his receding hairline, the private jokes only they understood. "Do you think he hates me now?" William asked suddenly, his voice breaking the silence. Kate squeezed his hand. "I don't think he hates you. I think he's hurting. And right now, he doesn't know how to stop lashing out." William looked down at the floor, his brow furrowed. "Maybe we were too hard on him. Maybe I could have handled things differently." Kate shook her head gently. "You've done more than anyone could expect. You've tried to be his brother and his protector. But Harry made his choices. He walked away from us. From all of this." She gestured to the grand room around them, filled with portraits of ancestors who had faced their own scandals and betrayals. The conversation drifted into silence again. Outside, the wind howled softly against the stone walls of Balmoral. For William and Kate, the decision to send that message hadn't come from malice. It had come from exhaustion. Years of trying to reconcile with Harry had left them drained. And now, with their own children to think about, they felt they could no longer sacrifice their peace for a brother who seemed determined to distance himself. But as William stared into the flames, he couldn't shake the feeling that something precious had been lost forever. In California, Harry had no idea of the discussions taking place at Balmoral or the tears Kate had shed behind closed doors. To him, the message felt like a rejection, cold and deliberate. But in Scotland, William and Kate weren't celebrating a victory. They were mourning the slow death of a relationship they once believed was unbreakable. The ripples of the message from Balmoral spread like cracks in glass, reaching far beyond the walls of Montecito and the turrets of the Scottish castle. Across the Atlantic, in palaces and press rooms alike, whispers grew louder. The royal rift that had simmered for years was no longer something that could be smoothed over with formal statements or carefully staged photo opportunities. It had exploded into the open. For Harry, the words, "You chose exile, stay there," were more than a message. They were a severing of ties, a final declaration that whatever fragile connection remained between him and his family had been cut. As he walked through the gardens of his Montecito estate the morning after his outburst, the sun blinding in its brightness, he felt strangely hollow. The rage had burned itself out, leaving behind only an ache that throbbed in his chest. He had spent so much of his life trying to be part of something bigger, his family, his country, the institution he had been born into. But now, he wasn't sure if he belonged anywhere. Megan watched him from the patio, a mug of tea cooling in her hands. She didn't interrupt him. She knew this was a storm he needed to weather alone, at least for now. Inside, she felt her own mix of emotions, anger at the Cambridges for sending such a blunt message, and fear about what it might do to Harry. He had been fragile before, but this felt different. This felt like a breaking point. Meanwhile, in the UK, the royal household moved cautiously. Aides at Kensington Palace and Buckingham Palace had been instructed not to comment publicly on the situation, but behind the scenes, there was unease. The firm had spent decades projecting unity and stability to the world. Now, that image was crumbling. For William and Kate, the days at Balmoral were filled with a tense quiet. On the surface, life went on as usual: family lunches, long walks through the moors, the children playing hide-and-seek in the gardens. But beneath that calm, emotions churned. William felt the weight of his choice pressing down on him. In private moments, he replayed the decision over and over, questioning if it had been the right move. "Did I go too far?" he asked Kate one evening as they sat on the balcony overlooking the estate. "You didn't," Kate replied firmly. "Harry needs boundaries, and we need peace. We can't keep letting him drag us into his chaos." But even Kate, known for her unflappable composure, had her doubts. She couldn't ignore the pang of sadness that hit her whenever she saw old photos of the three of them together, her, William, and Harry, laughing and carefree before the fractures appeared. The rift wasn't just emotional, it was strategic. Royal watchers pointed out that Harry and Meghan's departure had left a vacuum in the royal narrative, one the Cambridges were now expected to fill. Every step they took was scrutinized, every word analyzed for signs of tension. And now, with this message, they had drawn a definitive line in the sand. "Harry's out for good," one palace insider said bluntly. "This isn't a pause. This isn't give it time. This is permanent." But was it really? In Montecito, Harry wasn't so sure. Despite everything, the interviews, the memoir, the accusations, part of him had always held on to the hope that one day, somehow, things would be repaired. That he and William would sit down, away from cameras and courtiers, and speak as brothers again. Now, he wasn't sure that would ever happen. The press fed on the drama like wolves. British tabloids ran headlines screaming about Harry's tantrum and William's final warning. American media took a softer approach, focusing on Harry's pain and Meghan's role as his pillar of strength. Social media erupted with debate. #Royal Rift trended for days, with users taking sides in the ongoing feud. Team William praised the Cambridges for standing firm. Team Harry accused the royals of abandoning a man who had clearly struggled under the weight of duty and loss. Even within the royal family, opinions were divided. King Charles was said to be torn, his heart breaking over the distance between his sons. "He just wants peace," one confidant revealed. "But peace seems impossible right now." Camilla, ever pragmatic, reportedly advised him to stay out of it. "They're grown men," she told him. "They have to work this out or not on their own." But what if they couldn't? For Harry, the days after the message felt like floating in a void. He threw himself into mundane tasks, gardening, playing with Archie and Lilibet, helping Meghan with household projects, but the sense of disconnection lingered. Each night, he lay awake staring at the ceiling, the words still echoing in his head. "You chose exile, stay there." Had he really chosen this? Or had he been pushed? At Balmoral, William too wrestled with his own turmoil. He didn't hate his brother. He missed him, deeply. But he couldn't reconcile the Harry he remembered with the man he saw now, the man who had accused his family of racism, who had laid bare private conversations for the world to dissect. "Maybe one day he'll understand why we did this," William murmured to Kate as they watched the sunset from the library window. "Maybe," Kate replied softly, but her eyes betrayed doubt. The royal rift wasn't just deepening, it was hardening into something permanent. And as both brothers stood on opposite sides of the world, surrounded by their respective families, neither could shake the feeling that they were watching a relationship they had once cherished slip through their fingers forever. In the quiet of their Montecito estate, Meghan Markle moved through the house with a measured calm, but inside, her mind was a whirlpool of thoughts. She could see Harry struggling, could feel the weight of the message from Balmoral pressing down on him like a leaden curtain. Yet while Harry's emotions ricocheted between despair and anger, Meghan's reaction was different, colder, sharper. To her, this wasn't just a family disagreement. It was war. Since stepping back from royal duties, Meghan had carefully built a protective wall around their lives in California. Every decision, every interview, every carefully worded statement had been designed to reclaim control over their narrative. She had watched as Harry tried, time and again, to mend the cracks with his family. But each time they extended even the smallest olive branch, it seemed to Meghan that the royal institution struck back harder. Now, with this message, you chose exile, stay there. Meghan felt her worst fears had been confirmed. They don't see you as family anymore, she told Harry gently as they sat on the patio one evening. They see you as a threat. Harry rubbed his face with both hands, shaking his head. They don't understand. It was never about hurting them. I wanted my own life. Our own life. Why can't they see that? Meghan reached for his hand, her voice calm but edged with steel. Because they don't want to. This isn't about you and me as people. This is about the monarchy protecting itself. They're drawing a line because they're afraid of what we know, of what we've seen. To outsiders, Meghan had long been cast as the villain of the royal drama. A manipulator, a disruptor, the woman who pulled Harry away from his family and his country. But those who knew her privately said Meghan saw herself as the opposite, the one person in Harry's life willing to fight for him, even when no one else would. She's fiercely protective of him, a close friend revealed. She hates seeing Harry hurt, but she also feels like he's been too forgiving for too long. Meghan's not afraid to be the bad guy if it means shielding him. Inside the Sussex household, Meghan's strategy was clear. She encouraged Harry to channel his emotions into action rather than despair. We can't let them control the story, she urged him. If they want to shut us out, fine. But we're not going to sit here and let them define us. Some say Meghan's influence in this moment was decisive. While Harry was still wavering, unsure whether to respond to William's message or let the silence stretch, Meghan began quietly rallying their team. Phone calls to advisors, meetings with their PR consultants, brainstorming sessions late into the night. To Meghan, every crisis was an opportunity to reshape the narrative. People will only know what we show them, she reportedly told their team. We're not victims. We're builders. Let's remind the world of that. But Harry struggled with this approach. Meg, it's not about optics, he said one evening. This is my brother. My family. I don't care what the press thinks. I care that they've turned their backs on me. Meghan cupped his face in her hands, her dark eyes locked on his. I know, Harry. And I know it hurts. But you've tried everything. You've called, you've written, you've even flown back for funerals and events hoping it would make a difference. Did it? Harry's silence was answer enough. Royal insiders in Britain viewed Meghan's role in the rift with deep suspicion. Some suggested that she had encouraged Harry's estrangement, subtly pulling him further from his roots. She's the wedge, one senior courtier claimed. Without her, there might still be a chance for the brothers to reconcile. With her in the picture? It's impossible. But others argued Meghan was simply doing what any partner would do, protecting her husband from a toxic environment. A friend close to Meghan said, she saw what the press and the institution did to him, how it broke him. She's trying to keep him from being pulled back into that world. Back at Balmoral, Kate reportedly voiced her own frustrations to William. I can't help but feel Meghan's pushing this further, she said as they walked the grounds. Harry used to call you when things were bad between you. He doesn't anymore. She's the one he goes to now. William sighed, his face drawn. I don't want to blame her. Harry's a grown man. But I don't recognize him anymore. I don't know how much of this is really him and how much is her influence. In Montecito, Meghan remained composed outwardly, but she too carried her own burdens. The attacks in the British press, the tension with Harry's family, the responsibility of raising 2 children in the glare of global attention, it weighed on her. But unlike Harry, Meghan didn't crumble under the pressure. She hardened. They'll never accept us back, she told Harry one night, her tone even. And maybe that's okay. Maybe we're not supposed to go back. Harry looked at her then, his eyes red and tired. But what if I want to? Meghan didn't answer immediately. Instead, she took his hand and squeezed it tightly. Then we'll figure it out. But not if it means losing yourself again. In that moment, Harry felt the full force of the choice he had made years ago. He had chosen Meghan, chosen California, chosen freedom. But the cost of that choice had come crashing down on him in 7 devastating words from his brother. You chose exile, stay there. And as Meghan sat with him in the dark, she couldn't help but wonder if those words would become the scar that never healed, or the fire that finally set them free. The news broke like a thunderclap across the globe. One moment, The royal family was enjoying their private retreat in Balmoral, and the next, the world was fixated on a 7-word message that seemed to confirm what many had suspected for years. The divide between Prince Harry and the rest of the family was no longer just a private matter. You chose exile, stay there. Within hours, headlines blazed across the screens of smartphones and televisions everywhere. British tabloids ran with phrases like "Harry cut off for good" and "William's brutal ultimatum to Sussexes." In America, the tone was softer but no less intense. "Harry heartbroken after brother's message," and "Can this royal rift ever be healed?" Social media erupted. Hashtags like #RoyalRift, #TeamHarry, and #CambridgeVSussex trended worldwide, dividing public opinion like never before. On Twitter, users engaged in fierce debates, each camp defending their side with unyielding passion. He left. He made his choice. He can't expect to be welcomed back like nothing happened, one user wrote, aligning themselves with William and Kate. But a counterpoint quickly followed. Harry was driven out. He tried to protect his family. Now he's being punished for telling the truth. News networks aired panel discussions dissecting every possible angle. Body language experts analyzed old footage of the brothers together, trying to pinpoint the moment when affection turned into animosity. Royal historians weighed in on the unprecedented nature of the feud, drawing parallels to past family scandals, though few could recall anything quite as public or painful. In London, reporters gathered outside Buckingham Palace and Kensington Palace, hoping for an official comment. None came. The firm, true to form, maintained its silence, leaving space for speculation to grow unchecked. Meanwhile, in Montecito, Harry and Meghan watched the storm unfold from afar. Harry felt sick as he scrolled through his phone, seeing his private heartbreak turned into fodder for public entertainment. "They're treating this like it's a soap opera," he muttered, tossing the device aside. Meghan sat beside him, calmer than he expected. "That's what they've always done, Harry. They don't see us as people, they see us as characters in a story they get to write." But even Meghan couldn't ignore how deeply the message had resonated with the public. Friends in Los Angeles called to offer support, telling her she and Harry were being painted as victims by sympathetic American media outlets. But across the pond, the narrative was harsher. In the UK, public sentiment skewed heavily in favor of William and Kate. Pundits praised the couple for taking a firm stand against what they saw as Harry and Meghan's relentless airing of royal grievances. "William and Kate have shown incredible restraint," one commentator said on a popular morning program. "They've been dragged through the mud, and still, they've tried to keep the peace. This message wasn't cruel, it was necessary." Others disagreed. "This is heartbreaking," said an American talk show host. Two brothers torn apart because one dared to marry a woman the institution didn't like. It's a tragedy, not a scandal. The division wasn't confined to the media. Within ordinary households, families debated the issue over dinner tables. In offices, co-workers argued over coffee breaks. Even celebrities weighed in, some offering cryptic posts on Instagram or Twitter, others more directly expressing solidarity. Sometimes the hardest thing is cutting ties with toxicity. Even if it's family, one actress posted, widely interpreted as a comment in support of Harry and Meghan. But not everyone was sympathetic. A British author tweeted, "Actions have consequences. Harry has spent years undermining his family. Did he expect William to just smile and invite him back for tea?" At Balmoral, the family remained outwardly unfazed by the media storm. Inside, though, the tension was palpable. William reportedly told aides he had expected backlash but insisted he stood by his decision. "I didn't send that message for the public," he said quietly to Kate one evening. "I sent it for Harry. He needed to hear it, even if it hurt." But the public reaction complicated matters. Polls showed a surge in support for the Cambridges in Britain, with many praising their dignity. Yet in America, Harry and Meghan's popularity soared, especially among younger audiences who viewed them as victims of an outdated institution. Harry's friends in California encouraged him to lean into that narrative, to use the global attention to frame himself as a man standing up for his wife and children against impossible odds. But Harry resisted. "This isn't about spin," he told them during a tense call. "This is about my family. I don't care what the world thinks. I care that my brother thinks I'm not worth forgiving." As the media frenzy intensified, both sides remained silent. But their silence only made the noise louder. And as the world watched, many couldn't help but wonder, Was this the final chapter of the royal brothers' story, or merely another act in a tragedy that had no end? From the earliest days of his life, Prince Harry had felt the weight of the royal legacy pressing down on his shoulders. As the younger son of Prince Charles and Princess Diana, he was born into a world of privilege, expectation, and relentless scrutiny. Yet beneath the polished surface of royal appearances lay a complex emotional landscape, shaped by loss, loyalty, and a search for identity that would define much of his life. The death of his mother when Harry was just 12 years old left an indelible mark. Diana was not just a mother to him and William. She was a symbol of compassion and rebellion within a rigid institution. Her tragic passing created a rift between the public's adoration and the palace's private grief, a rift Harry would spend years trying to bridge. Growing up in the shadow of his elder brother, William, Harry struggled to find his place. The two shared a fierce bond, forged in childhood games and shared grief. Yet as they matured, their paths diverged. William embraced the traditional role of heir apparent with seriousness and duty, while Harry sought a freer, more unconventional life, often chafing against the strictures of royal protocol. This tension simmered beneath the surface, coming to a head as Harry entered adulthood. His military service offered a brief respite, providing a sense of purpose and escape from royal life. But even as he served, the glare of media attention followed relentlessly. Harry's romantic relationship with Meghan Markle marked a turning point, not only in his personal life but in his emotional journey. Meghan represented a break from tradition, a chance to forge a new path away from the constraints of royal expectations. Their decision to marry was both a declaration of love and a challenge to the institution that had shaped Harry's life. Yet, this choice brought new challenges. The intense media scrutiny, combined with internal family tensions, led to increasing pressure on Harry. His public struggles with mental health, candidly shared in interviews and documentaries, revealed a man grappling with the costs of his royal identity. The decision to step back from royal duties was as much about reclaiming emotional freedom as it was about practical concerns. Harry sought to protect his family from the relentless spotlight, hoping to provide a more normal life for his children. Despite these efforts, the rift with his brother William grew deeper. The message from Balmoral was a painful confirmation that the emotional distance between them had become a chasm. Psychologists note that family estrangement, especially among siblings, is among the most painful of human experiences. For Harry, the public nature of this estrangement magnified the emotional toll. The loss of familial connection, coupled with feelings of betrayal and abandonment, created a complex emotional landscape he continues to navigate. Harry's memoirs and interviews reveal a man torn between loyalty to his family and loyalty to himself. He speaks openly of his pain, confusion, and longing for reconciliation, even as he stands firm in his decisions. His emotional journey is one of resilience and vulnerability, a testament to the human cost behind headlines and royal pageantry. As Harry continues to build his life in California, he carries with him the hope that someday, healing might be possible. But for now, the wounds from the Balmoral message remain raw, a stark reminder of the fractured family he longs to reunite. The question now looming large over the royal family and the world watching their saga unfold is simple yet profound. What comes next? After the blunt message from Balmoral and Harry's subsequent emotional fallout, the future of the relationship between the brothers feels more uncertain than ever. Many wonder whether reconciliation is even possible or if this is the beginning of a permanent estrangement. For Harry, the choice to continue building a life in California seems clear. He and Meghan have established a new foundation, one that prioritizes privacy, family, and independence from the monarchy's strictures. Their business ventures, philanthropic efforts, and public appearances suggest a couple committed to forging their own path. Yet beneath the surface, Harry continues to wrestle with the deep desire for familial connection and acceptance. William and Kate, meanwhile, face their own challenges. They must balance protecting their children and the monarchy's legacy with the personal pain of a brother lost to distance and anger. Their decision to send the Balmoral message was an attempt to set boundaries, but it has also escalated the rift, making the path to healing more complicated. Royal experts speculate about potential next moves. Some suggest a formal mediated meeting could eventually be arranged, possibly facilitated by King Charles or other trusted family members. Such a meeting would aim to open lines of communication and address grievances in a private setting. Others believe that both sides may need years to cool off before meaningful dialogue can resume, if at all. The public nature of their dispute complicates reconciliation, as every word and action is dissected by media and the public, making genuine privacy difficult to maintain. Meghan's role in the family's future is also a focal point. Will she be accepted if and when the brothers attempt to bridge the gap? Or will lingering suspicions and resentment keep her excluded? The answer remains unclear. The monarchy itself faces the challenge of managing a narrative that balances tradition with modernity, unity with individuality. How they handle this deeply personal family conflict will impact their public image and relevance in a rapidly changing world. For Harry, the decision about the future is entwined with his sense of self. Does he seek to return to the fold on the institution's terms, or continue forging a new identity away from royal life? His choices will shape not only his own path but the legacy of the royal family for generations to come. In the meantime, the world watches and waits, captivated by a story of brotherhood, betrayal, and the complex ties that bind even the most privileged families. As one royal commentator put it, this isn't just a family feud. It's a reflection of how institutions and individuals collide in the modern age. The outcome will resonate far beyond the palace walls.